Now we're going to look at creating and graphing equations using standard form. So remember, our standard form has the function in the format ax squared plus bx plus c. So the example we're going to look at today is example number 2 on page 161 in our workbook. And it's h of x equals 2x squared minus 11x plus 5. So my first step is to label the equation's terms in the format ax squared plus bx plus c. So if I am doing that, this one is already in the order for me, but remember your a term has to be that first coefficient that is attached to the x squared. My b term is the coefficient that is just attached to the x, and my c term is the constant. So I've done that. I labeled the equation's terms in the format ax squared plus bx plus c. To add a little bit to this, I can also write out to the side, and I'll use the lighter shade of purple. I know that in this equation, a equals 2, b equals negative 11, and c equals 5. My next step is to determine whether the graph opens up or down. If your a is positive, so if your a is greater than 0, then you know that your parabola is going to open up. If it's less than 0, so if it's a negative number, you know it opens down. My a value is positive 2, so I know my graph is going to open up. Now I'm ready for step 3. Step 3 is to find the vertex and plot this point. And what we need to do in order to find the vertex is find our x value using this formula and then plug in and solve for y using that x value. So what I'm going to do is do this step underneath here. I know that my x value of my vertex, I'm going to go here, is going to be negative b over 2a. So I know I have negative, and then whatever my b term is, over 2 times whatever my a term is. I'm going to use a lighter color blue so we can just tell what's in parentheses and what is a part of our formula. My b is negative 11, and my a is 2. I'm going to simplify this. So I have negative 11. A negative times a negative is a positive. So we have positive 11 over 4. We can reduce this down to be in decimal form if we want. So I know 11 over 4, if I want to write it as a mixed number or a decimal, we just do division. So if I have my calculator, well, one, I could probably do this in my head, right? Because this is just going to be 2 3/4, because 4 times 2 is 8. 8 plus 3 is 11, which would be 11 over 4, which I know is 2.75. But if I can't do that, I can just type it into my calculator. 11 divided by 4. And I get the decimal. That's not it. That just tells me the x value. I need to know the y value. So in order to find the y value, I need to go back up to my original equation and I need to plug in for x. So my original equation is h of x equals 2x squared minus 11x plus 5. So what I'm going to do is replace all of my x's with 2.75. So we get h of 2.75 equals 2 times 2.75 squared minus 11 times 2.75 plus 5. when I type this all into my calculator, I will get my y value. So we have 2 times 2.75 squared minus 11 times 2.75 plus 5. And I get negative 10.125. So that means that my vertex, or my minimum value, since it's an upward opening parabola, is at the point 2.75 and negative 10.125. That's my vertex. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is go on to my next step. My next step is to find the y-intercept and plot it. This is super easy because all my y-intercept is my value for C. So this is my y-intercept. So y-intercept is just 0, 5. So my y-intercept is 0, 5. I know that my minimum value, my vertex, which I didn't plot before, but I can, is 2.75, so about right here, and then negative 10.125. So a little past the negative 10. It's about right there. And I'm also going to draw my line of symmetry. Okay, now I'm on step 5. Step 5 says to find and plot the x-intercepts. So we're going to have to think back to our previous videos. So lessons 5.4, 5.5, and 5.6, I believe, tell us how to factor an equation in standard form. Once we factor it, then we can find the x-intercepts. So I'm going to do that quickly by creating my square. So I don't think I'll have enough space over here, so I'm going to do it down here. I know that my equation, we've got 2x squared minus 11x plus 5. We set that equal to 0. In order to factor an equation in standard form, you draw your box if your a is not equal to 1. I put a, my first term, 2x squared, in this first box, and my third term in this last box. I multiply my first and my third term, and I get 10x squared. I need two factors for 10x squared that add to be my middle term. So they need to add to be negative 11x. I know that it's going to be a negative number times a negative number because this is negative 11x and they have to multiply to be a positive. I know that it's negative 10x and negative 1x. I put those two terms in the last two boxes, and then I factor out the GCF. The GCF for 2x squared and negative 10x is 2x. The GCF for negative 1x and 5 is just 1. The GCF for negative 10x and 5 is 5. And the GCF for 2x squared and negative 1x is just x. I plug into my parentheses. So in my parentheses, I have parenthesis, 2x and 1. And then I have x and 5. I know that these both have to be subtraction signs because I have to end up with negative 1x and negative 10x in order to get this. I set it equal to 0, and I have my two factors. With my two factors, I set them equal to 0. And I know I'm going through this part fast, but hopefully you watched my other videos and you know how to factor on your own already. And if you don't, go back and watch those videos so you can learn how to do this. We solve for x. And my first x-intercept is just 1/2 or 0.5. And my other x-intercept is 5. So on my x-axis, I'm going to find where my intercepts are, and I have one at 0.5 and the other one at 5. Then what I need to do is connect my dots and extend the line. So the good thing about this is we have enough dots to connect our dots and extend the lines, because if I just connect my y-intercept to my x-intercept, my curve is not going to be perfect. I have to curve back up at my minimum, and I have my graph.